They ruled the stars for centuries, cruel, proud, and untouchable. Every species they met bowed or burned. Then one day they saw something strange. A human ship, alone, drifting into forbidden space. It was small. It was weak. It was laughing. Moments later, the galaxy's greatest hunters lost contact with their scout ship. No weapons, no warning, just silence and fear. That was the moment the predators realized they weren't at the top anymore. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's move to this wonderful story. In the vast silence of space, a single ship drifted beyond the edges of known charts. Its frame was small, patched with different metals, a sign of repairs made on the fly. Inside, Captain Joren Vale leaned back in his pilot seat, sipping cold coffee and watching the stars slide past. Earth was weeks behind him now. He was alone, exploring sectors untouched by human eyes, chasing whispers of something new. Joren wasn't a hero. He had no medals, no grand title. He was just a man with a ship, a curious mind, and a stubborn streak that often got him into trouble. This time it brought him far beyond the reach of any known human signal. His scanners picked up strange energy patterns, unlike anything he had seen before. He followed them, drawn by the thrill of the unknown. What he didn't know was that someone, something, was already watching him. On the other side of the stars, the Zirenth Dominion ruled like shadows over a sleeping galaxy. They were silent, efficient, and deeply cruel. For thousands of years they had risen by crushing every species they encountered. Their ships darkened skies, their armies moved like smoke, and their leaders believed no creature could stand against them. To the Zirenth, fear was not just a tool, it was a law of nature. Deep in their command fortress, a signal flashed. Commander Scareth, tall and cold-eyed, stood before a glowing screen. A human ship had entered a forbidden zone of space, powered by unstable but strangely effective technology. A scout from Earth? One officer asked with a scoff. They still burn fuel like animals, let it drift. They are too weak to be worth our time. But not everyone laughed. Sira, a young observer with no rank but a sharp mind, stared at the data. She leaned closer. This energy pattern, it's not standard, she said softly. They're using something new. And look, their ship just avoided a meteor field with no warning system. That was manual. That was instinct. Scareth narrowed his eyes. Send a watcher. I want to see how these humans move when they don't know they're being watched. A stealth drone, black as the void, glided from a hidden bay. It followed Joren's ship silently, watching from a distance. At first, there was nothing unusual. Joren sang old Earth songs, read adventure novels, and occasionally argued with his ship's voice assistant. But then the unexpected happened. His sensors blinked. A strange pulse crossed his screen. Brief, flickering, almost teasing. Back in the Zirenth control room, the watcher sent data home. Sira watched with growing concern. The human ship just detected us, she said. It's reacting. Scareth frowned. Impossible. They don't have the tech. But then the lights on the human ship changed. A quiet hum turned into a sharp buzz. Joren stared at the flickering console. What the hell? He muttered. The screen flashed. Lines of strange code danced across, not from his ship, but from something outside. He tapped a few commands. Static answered. Then something stranger appeared. A message. We see you. Joren blinked. Well, that's not creepy at all. Suddenly, alarms screamed. The stealth drone watching him began to shake. Inside its control system, symbols no Zirenth had ever seen filled the screen. The drone's power dropped. Its engines shut down. Sira gasped. They're hacking us. Scareth's face turned stone. That's not possible. Before he could speak again, the transmission ended with a loud, strange sound. A laugh. It was not a mocking laugh, not angry or fearful. It was just amused. Then silence. Joren's ship powered back up. He had no idea what just happened. He only knew one thing. He had touched something that touched back. On the Xeranth homeworld, the High Council gathered. The drone was lost. No weapons had been fired. No enemy ships were seen. But something had struck them, not with lasers or bombs, but with precision, confidence, and an eerie sense of humor. "What are these humans?" one elder asked. Scareth said nothing. His thoughts were heavy. Sira sat in the corner, quiet, thinking about the laughter. There was no fear in it, no desperation, just defiance. That night, as the council argued and blamed each other, Sira opened the human data logs again. Images of crowded cities, messy streets, people dancing in rain and arguing in markets filled her screen. Nothing about them made sense to the cold logic of her world. But as she watched, one truth settled into her mind like dust on a window. The humans were not powerful. They were not wise. But they were something the Xeranth had never prepared for. They were unpredictable. And perhaps that was more dangerous than anything else. Out in deep space, Joran Vale adjusted course. He didn't know who had watched him or why his ship had nearly shut down. But he felt it, like a breeze before a storm. Something was coming. Something big. He whispered to himself with a half smile. Next time, maybe knock first. And the stars rolled on, quiet and cold but no longer untouched. The mining base floated between Mars and Jupiter, hidden among rocks, dust, and silence. It was old, patched together like an iron skeleton, but it worked. Inside, the miners were tired, covered in grime, and humming to the beat of songs from Earth's past. The stars outside didn't matter to them. They had work to do. Break the rock, find the metal, get paid. Danger was a daily thing, but they had no idea real danger was watching them from just beyond the belt. Cole Renar, the oldest miner on the base, had been through 3 wars and more close calls than he cared to count. His back hurt. His hands were scarred, and his voice sounded like gravel. But his eyes were sharp. He moved slowly but saw everything. Most of the younger workers thought he was just another cranky old man with too many stories. But today, he felt something wrong in his bones. Above the base, hidden behind drifting debris, a Xeranth assault vessel waited. Inside, Commander Zarek watched the humans through silent feeds. His soldiers were tall, armored, and deadly. The mission was simple. Capture a few humans, alive if possible, and study them. Find out what made them different. After the strange loss of a Xeranth drone near Earth, the High Council needed answers. They are distracted. They're not soldiers, Zarek growled. This will be easy. The ship moved in quietly, using the dust fields as cover. It docked without alerting the station. Then, with a silent hiss, the assault began. The base shook. Explosions tore through airlocks. Lights flickered and went out. Oxygen hissed from broken vents. Miners screamed. The corridors filled with shadows. Xeranth soldiers, sharp-clawed and fast, moved like smoke. One miner tried to fight with a wrench but was slammed into a wall. Another ran, only to be gunned down. Panic spread like fire. Cole stood in the engine room with a few others. 8 people, 6 men, 2 women, slammed the door shut behind them. The emergency lights flickered red. Lena Voss, a young engineer, breathed hard, clutching a metal rod. Her face was smudged with oil and fear. "They're everywhere," she whispered. "We're dead." "No," Cole said, his voice low and steady. "They want us alive. That's their mistake." He pulled open a supply locker. Inside were old mining charges, small explosives meant for breaking asteroids. He set them on, the table like cards in a game. "You're not serious," Lena said. "I'm dead serious," Cole replied. "We're not going down easy. Let's remind them that miners bite back." In 10 minutes, the engine room became a trap. Lena rewired the door with explosives. Another miner rigged the drills as weapons. They poured oil across the floor and sparked small fires. Every corner became a danger zone. The air was hot, filled with smoke and tension. Outside, Zarek's troops cut through the last barrier. The metal groaned. Then the door burst open, and all hell broke loose. The first Xirenth soldier stepped in and exploded. The fire followed, filling the room with smoke and heat. But the miners didn't stop. They struck from the shadows like wild animals. One miner jumped onto a soldier's back, slamming a pipe into its helmet. Another used a drill to pin an attacker to the wall. The room became a battlefield. Even as the humans fell, they fought harder. One man, bleeding and burned, held his ground until the last second. Lena, limping from a blast, grabbed a piece of hot metal and swung it like a sword. Cole moved like a ghost, planting traps and dragging the injured to safety. Sarek watched from the hallway, stunned. His soldiers were elite, trained for battle, but now they were being pushed back by workers with no real weapons, just tools, grit, and rage. Retreat, Sarek finally ordered. Fall back to the ship. The few remaining Xirenth fled through the base, dragging their wounded. Smoke filled the halls, walls cracked, alarms screamed. Behind them, the humans didn't chase. They simply watched, broken and breathing, but standing. As the Xirenth ship detached and prepared to leave, one last figure stumbled out of the airlock. It was Cole. His suit was torn, his face burned, and one arm hung useless, but he raised his other hand stained with blood and held up a small transmitter. He pressed the button. A single message was sent into the stars. "Tell your leaders, we don't kneel." The signal echoed through space like a warning bell. Far away in the quiet halls of the Xirenth High Council, the message arrived. Leaders leaned forward, frowning. Soldiers had been lost. A human mining station had fought off an elite squad. This was no longer a minor problem. These were not soldiers, one elder said. They were miners. And still, another replied, they made us bleed. Zarek stood before the council, bruised and silent. We thought them weak, he said at last, but I saw it in their eyes. Fear didn't stop them. Pain didn't stop them. They were not defending a base, they were defending each other. The room was silent. Sira, now a trusted advisor, whispered a thought that chilled even the proudest warriors. They don't just fight, she said. They refuse to fall. And in that quiet, the Xirenth began to understand. The humans were not prey. They were the fire, and it was just beginning to burn. The sky above Mars was thin and red, stretched across endless deserts. Wind whipped across the rocky ground, carrying dust that stung the skin and stung the soul. It was not a friendly place. But for the humans who lived there, it had become home, and a battlefield. Sergeant Dax Merrill stood on a ridge overlooking the northern flats. He wore desert armor worn smooth from years of training. His eyes scanned the horizon, steady and focused. This wasn't his first fight. He had been a soldier on Earth, but Mars had changed him. It taught him patience, taught him silence. Out here, noise could get you killed. Beside him, crouched low and squinting at a flickering tablet, was Fenya, a small woman with clever hands and a mind sharp as a blade. She was the team's comms, expert, always 2 steps ahead of any signal, always listening. They're coming, Fenya said quietly. Lots of them. Dax nodded. Time to go dark. High above, the Xirenth fleet moved into position. Dozens of warships blocked out the stars, each carrying soldiers, weapons, and cold confidence. The Dominion had suffered losses at Earth's mining base. Now they wanted revenge. Mars was the next target. They believed it would be simple: drop troops, crush resistance, and move on. They were wrong. The first Xirenth ships entered the Martian atmosphere with loud roars and streams of fire. From orbit, it looked like a meteor shower. They landed in the northern deserts where they believed defenses were weakest. Thousands of armored soldiers marched in tight formations, weapons at the ready. Their leader, General Adric Nor, moved with the calm of a man who had never lost. He looked across the red landscape and smirked. No resistance, he said. Just dirt and shadows. But the shadows were watching. Dax and his team had prepared for weeks. They knew every canyon, Every ridge, every place where rock and silence could hide a soldier. The desert was their ally. Explosives had been placed in narrow passes. Sniper nests were hidden under camouflage netting. They waited like wolves in tall grass. The first ambush came at dusk. As a Zeranth squad entered a canyon, small charges blew the walls inward, trapping them in dust and rock. Sniper fire followed, quick and deadly. The soldiers never saw who hit them. They died with confusion in their eyes. Across the flats, other squads were attacked by mines hidden beneath red sand. Some fell into deep pits lined with metal spikes. Others found their weapons jammed by static. Fenya had hacked the enemy comms, disrupting orders and causing chaos. The soldiers began shouting over each other, unsure of who was in charge. General Adric growled, watching his troops fall apart. Find the source, crush them. But the humans were ghosts. At night they moved silently through the dunes. They struck from behind using knives, pistols, and fire. Special forces teams appeared from hidden tunnels, attacked with speed, then vanished like smoke. Dax led one of those teams, his face hidden by a desert mask, his steps light in the sand. He didn't yell commands. He didn't need to. His team knew what to do. They moved like one creature, fast, brutal, and without mercy. One night, Dax's team disabled an entire Zeranth outpost with nothing more than wires, dust, and timing. They used fake signals to draw the guards away, then slipped inside, planting charges. The blast could be seen from miles away. Fenya, listening to enemy signals, heard fear growing. "They're scared," she whispered. "They don't know who we are or where we are." General Adric sent for reinforcements, but the skies were no longer safe. Human fighter drones swarmed in the upper air, launching missiles and dropping EMP charges. Several Zeranth ships were hit before they could land. Others were forced to retreat. As the days passed, the red sands were stained darker. The desert became a graveyard. Adric stood in his command tent, now surrounded by empty chairs and silence. His once proud army had been reduced to scattered units, hiding in craters and caves. His pride was cracking. "These are not soldiers," he muttered. "They're something else." His final message to the Dominion High Command was short. Mars is lost. The retreat was slow and bitter. The last few transports lifted off under cover of darkness. On the surface, Dax watched with quiet eyes. He didn't cheer. He simply stood still, letting the wind carry the red dust past him. He knew it wasn't over. Back on Earth, news of the Mars victory spread quickly. People didn't throw parades. They lit candles. They whispered names. They remembered the fallen. The message wasn't about power. It was about survival. And something stronger. Hope. The enemy had come with fire and steel, but the humans answered with grit and silence. They fought not because they wanted war, but because they believed in each other. In the deserts of Mars, they didn't just defend the land. They defended the spirit of being human. And now, across the stars, others had started to notice. The sky above Earth was calm, but everyone knew the storm was coming. Across cities and quiet countryside, people stood still, looking up. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the largest Zeranth fleet ever built was moving toward them. It was the last gamble of a dying empire. Inside a high-security bunker deep beneath the surface, Nael Voss sat in front of a wall of glowing screens. His fingers moved fast over the keys. The air was tense, full of quiet humming from machines and whispered voices. Nael wasn't a soldier like his sister Lena, who had died on the mining base. He was a cyber warrior, one of Earth's best. And today, he would face his most important task. Behind him, Thessa Rain watched carefully. Once a diplomat, she had become a strategist, smart, calm, and always 2 steps ahead. She had helped unite Earth's scattered leaders and brought new allies to their side. Now she stood tall, hands folded, waiting for the right moment. "They'll reach orbit in 10 minutes, a voice called from the corner. Nael took a breath. Then it's time. Above Earth, the Zeranth fleet began to slow. Hundreds of ships formed a dark wave across space. Each was loaded with soldiers, weapons, and enough firepower to turn entire continents to ash. At the front of the lead ship stood King Vekar Sol, the last true ruler of the Zirenth dominion. His face was pale, eyes cold. "If we cannot rule," he said quietly, "then we will destroy." But Niall was already in their systems. With a few keystrokes, he launched a full digital attack. Earth's satellites linked together, sending out coded pulses. The signal was fast, sharp, and precise. It slid into the enemy ships like invisible arrows. Lights on the Zirenth vessels began to flicker. Engines stalled. Weapons stopped responding. One by one, the ships froze. Soldiers panicked. Commands stopped flowing. Screens went black. Vekar stood still, watching as his mighty fleet became nothing, more than metal statues drifting in space. Then a voice echoed across their comms. "You feared nothing," Thessa said, her voice calm. "Now fear us." At that moment, human strike teams launched from hidden stations on the moon and deep-sea bases. They boarded the disabled ships swiftly, locking down corridors and securing control rooms without firing a single shot. The Zirenth, soldiers once proud and feared, had no choice. They dropped their weapons and surrendered. Back on the ground, people wept with relief. For the first time in generations, the Earth was safe. But it wasn't just about safety anymore. Something bigger was beginning. On distant planets, news spread quickly. Species that had been ruled by the Zirenth began to rise. Rebellions sparked on worlds once silent. The fall of the mighty empire lit a fire of freedom across the stars. On the moon of Karnath, a woman named Drenna stood before a crowd of her people. Once a slave under the Zirenth, she now held a banner made from torn cloth and hope. "We are not weak," she cried out. "Humans have shown us the way. We stand today because they stood first." Cheers echoed across the square. On Earth, a massive space station hovered above the former capital of the Zirenth Empire. Inside, a new council was forming, one not ruled by fear or force but by cooperation. Leaders from many species gathered in a great chamber, speaking freely for the first time in their lives. Thessa stood at the center of the council. "We did not fight to conquer," she said. "We fought to survive. Now we build together, or we fall alone." The humans made 3 requests. First, that all slaves and prisoners be freed immediately. Second, that the Zirenth help rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. And third, that every species, no matter how small, would have a voice in this new galactic council. Some were unsure. They had seen the power of humanity and feared that power. But Earth did not demand control. Instead, they offered support, knowledge, and protection. Slowly, trust began to grow. In the following years, peace returned. The Zirenth who once ruled learned to listen. Some joined the council, unsure at first, but slowly understanding. Across the stars, ruins were repaired, cities rebuilt, and families reunited. Trade flowed where battles once raged. On Earth, children sat in classrooms learning about the Great War, not as a tale of hate but as a story of courage. They were told about the battles of Mars, the stand in the asteroid belt, and the silence that followed the fall of the Zirenth fleet. In the heart of Earth's capital, a statue stood tall. It showed a single human standing strong, hand outstretched, not in anger but in peace. Around the statue were carvings of many species side by side. Above them were the words, "Together we rise." Old soldiers shared stories with young ones, not about weapons but about unity. They said the true strength of humans was never in their machines or their muscles but in their hearts, in their will to protect, to endure, and to hope. And in a quiet garden on the station orbiting the stars, Niall sat alone holding a small photo of his sister. He smiled softly. "We made it, Lena," he whispered. "The galaxy was not perfect. There were still dangers, still shadows beyond the stars. But it had changed, and it would keep changing, because one day when the strongest empire thought it could never fall, a spark had lit in the darkness. A human spark, and it refused to go out.